Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Good night. Good night. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, El Presidente, or former Maduro. He's been captured by the US from his home nation of Venezuela. A lot can be said about this, pro and con, both sides, optics good or optics bad. A lot of different opinions going around, quite polarizing. We're going to try and deal with all of that today. Now, the first thing that we'll deal with, because it's the first thing I have, is, was this, oh, that's not the right thing at all. In fact, I have it here. Was this voluntary? Was it part of a negotiated exit? We were talking about this just before I started the recording. There's evidence to suggest, oh God, that's really annoying, evidence to suggest that it was a negotiated exit, i.e. someone on Twitter saying that the opposition said it was. And in my opinion, the fact that there was no shooting back at any of the military that nabbed him implies it might well have been negotiated. No loss of life, no equipment damage, nothing. Now that could just have been a very good military operation. And that's the thing, I can't give you a conclusion on what this was. And that means it could very well have been just a very well coordinated military operation. The evidence against it having been negotiated is that he was seen in his pajamas. If someone has the image of that, please post it, the white clothing. However, was it pajamas? It might just have been clothing deliberately that he was put in to make him as visible as possible. And he was later seen in a hoodie, which I think we have here. So that's the first thing. Not sure about that. Both are possible. But we have a lot on this topic. So let's just go through what we have in order. We have here, President Trump states that Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado doesn't have the support or respect to run Venezuela. Now, a lot has been said about the Jewish connection here. And the Jewish connection seems to be quite significant. There's reports that Israel gave the go-ahead to make this strike just before it happened. There's a lot of people saying, and we'll go through them in a minute, a lot of people saying that this is good for Israel, that Israel are happy with this. And Maria Corina Machado was making a lot of noise about being pro-Israel, and she is one of the opposition leaders in the country who may become the next El Presidente-Rus. And many of the people who were being, I think, a little negative, perhaps fairly, about Israel's involvement here, were landing it all on Trump, calling him the Cheeto Goy in chief or something along those lines. Some of that is fair. He is very much more pro-Jew, pro-Israel than I would prefer. However, it doesn't always track. He is saying that this woman, Maria Corina Machado, who is very pro-Israel, he doesn't think she should be the leader. Now, I believe what happened, I did a little bit of research on this yesterday, is that she was the party leader, or at least she was high up in the party, of the opposition party that actually won the most votes, or at least is believed to have won the most votes, because the election in 2024 seems to have been highly rigged. So it's not exactly clear, but they were the opposition that won at least the second most behind Maduro. Opinion polls, I believe, before were saying it was something like 60-20, but then the results were like 55-45, so it looked really rigged, and it probably was. She was in the opposition party there, but she wasn't actually the leader by the time it finished. The leader by the time it finished was Eduardo Gonzalez, I believe, who is obviously male. Now, I haven't seen his positions on Israel, but she's the one everyone's been pointing to as the kind of Israel shill, is talking about moving the headquarters, not headquarters, sorry, the embassy to Jerusalem. And it leaves a bad taste, doesn't it? But Trump saying he doesn't have the support or respect. I'm not sure that's even true, by the way. I think he might be wrong about that. But it's not what you'd expect him to say if he was just blindly pro-Jew. So, not sure about that. We'll look into that more as we go through. I will say that there's a lot of optimistic and pessimistic narratives around this. And you know me, I tend to have an optimistic bias, or like leaning. Bias is not quite the right word, but leaning. But I am trying to take all things into account here, because the pessimistic side may be correct, and there's certainly aspects of it that don't look so good. So we'll go into all of it and give all of it the light of day to examine. So Trump then is quoted here as saying, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect. Now, again, I'm not sure if that's actually true. I think as one of the main figures in the opposition party, I think she probably does have the respect. There's speculation here that it's going to be Rubio running it, and Marco Rubio being Cuban, I think, wanted to topple the Venezuelan regime for quite a while. I think Trump just sort of let him off the leash at some point recently, and he went ahead and did it. Which, hey, if so, works for me. I mean, I'll reveal a bit of my position here. Venezuela was fucking awful. It was, even from almost every perspective you can look at it, it was bad for its own people. It was bad for the massive natural resources they have in the area. It was very bad as a vector to attack the US via drug smuggling, something that I don't think we have really concrete public evidence of, but we have plenty of strong indications that that was happening on a large scale as well. And I'm willing to trust Trump's judgment that it was as well. I think overall this has got to be a good thing. Now, I think there's a little mistake people make where if the Jews are involved, it has to be bad. Not necessarily. It could be good for the US and Israel, both, separately, independently. But they do work together, arguably too much. So I can understand the apprehension there. Support and respect are different. In this case, not very. Mixing up with Rodriguez, they say. So yeah, she can't manage to be leader of Venezuela. There's more on that. I think there was some interesting comments from people saying that no, she does have the respect. Actually, maybe it was in this thread. Yeah, okay, so this was it. This one says, Trump dismisses Machado's support. Her 92% primary win mobilized 2.4 million Venezuelans. Now he courts Maduro's VP for oil deals, betraying the Nobel laureate and the opposition's 67% mandate. Liberation becomes larceny, stealing a nation's democratic will for crude control, a betrayal that reeks of hypocrisy. Strong wording, probably AI written, but strong wording anyway. The fact that she's a Nobel laureate doesn't really help her case, to be honest. If anything, that's a bit suspicious. 67% mandate, I'm not sure where that's measured from, but that wasn't the official numbers given, though, of course, those are probably rigged. 92% primary win, that could have just been regional, so it doesn't tell us too much about the whole country. And the 2.4 million Venezuelans mobilized, she could have just been part of the movement. So I'm not sure what the details there exactly are on how popular she genuinely is. My point here is not whether she should lead or not. I'm not really making a statement on that. Just that it's weird that Trump would say no to her when she is supposedly the pro-Israel choice, if he is so pro-Israel. So it's not quite as clear-cut, I don't think, as people are saying. Let's see what else we've got here. So this was a good theory from the community. This is Achilles. He says, guys, hear me out. What if Nicolas Maduro was the actual chud who conjured a decade-long spell in 2016 so that his reign would be unchallenged? But as the spell got weakened in 2026, the Trump admin got him, and now things will start happening again. Immediately, while this is happening, Iran is collapsing. And that's another story we'll look at today. So maybe this is true. There might be something to this. Anyway, next thing. Now, this is a little PSA. Alex Jones posted this. And do you know what happened when I saw this? I opened this and someone linked this as, hey, look, they're out in the streets celebrating. And they might well be. But what I said when I saw this is, I'm not sure about this. Alex Jones has posted stuff before, which is like, it's old footage. It may be representative of what's happening, but it's not what's actually happening. It's old footage. It's not actually really what's happening. And that's what he was claiming that this was, at least strongly implying that this was current footage. So I said that. I said that it might not be current footage. And then I scroll down. Community note. This video shows anti-Maduro protests in Caracas on July 29th, 2024, following the disputed presidential election, not celebrations of his recent capture by US forces. Now, I think there probably are people out in the streets cheering. I've heard reports that there are. But Alex Jones, I perfectly predicted it somehow. Alex Jones has a tendency of doing this. This is arguably a lie. That's the thing. I'm not sure about Jones. I think I'd be careful with him if I were you. He says a lot of things that are true, but that is something that you would get if you were a useful retard. And I think he is, despite the fact he's correct on a lot of things, and he has got a lot of wisdom. He's very dedicated and passionate to what he does. What he does might actually be overall worse for our side, just by the effect of how he appears to be. And that may be evidenced by how many supposedly unique or covert sources of information he is allowed to have access to. Now, I don't mean to sound like Aiden here or Scrump, but I think this may be an exception. Next thing. We got that. Yeah, so this image is DEA surrounding Maduro in a chair with thumbs up. Now, this might be real, and it's hard to bloody tell because AI these days is harder and harder. It may be real. I mean, I think this is real, and this is DEA, and he's, actually the clothing is different that he's wearing. So, arguably, I don't know what the hat is here, but it's very strange. But this, I'm not sure is real. It doesn't make much difference. But all I was looking at is in the background here, some of these pipes don't quite look aligned. Like this is what you'd expect. The kind of wavy lines, slightly wavy lines here is what you'd expect from AI. But honestly, it could be real. It very well could be. Text is no longer really a good indication, unless it's very small text of whether something is real or not. The weird censoring of the faces doesn't quite look right. Like in here, it's only censored part of it's still there. So I don't know. I would lean slightly in the direction of this is real. Actually, he's got the same hat on here, doesn't he? So yeah, I guess it probably is real. But yeah, it's fun anyway. He is acting kind of like somewhat positive in photos that I've seen, which is probably the best look he can have. So what else we got? This is for Iran. We'll look at that later. So Cuban president says we are prepared to give blood for Venezuela. I'm not sure whether he means in favor of the now deposed president or in favor of the people who helped depose him. But he says the very dark object of imperialist desire is Venezuelan oil. Land and natural resources of Venezuela. No imperialists. This is not your backyard. Yes, I believe he's concerned that it's going to happen to him as well. Chat, press 1 if what he's saying here is mostly motivated by concern that it's about to happen to him as well. Cuba is the next target, pretty much. Cuba is not quite as juicy a goal, but it is still a communist regime that's not good for the people living in it. So, yeah, he's probably in some trouble there. Zeman says Venezuela was financing Cuba for the last decade at least. That would also do it. Zenman here is basically our South American correspondent, given that he lives in Argentina. Thank you, Zenman. I may call on your expertise again. Rubio, if Rubio was the motivation behind the Venezuela attack, kidnap, the one who was even killed, is it even an attack? Either way, kidnap, op. If he was the motivation behind that, he probably wants to go after Cuba as well. And if cutting out Venezuela defunds Cuba, he might not even need to. The thing is with Cuba is Venezuela is such a juicy target because of the oil. For the last at least a decade, the oil has been drastically underutilized because of socialism. Primarily, I mean, that's where it stems from, but there's a few other reasons as well in there. But social corruption, but again, comes back to socialism. Just horrible mismanagement. And the US, if the US or if Israel puts a puppet there, your oil prices, your fucking petrol prices will go down. Everything will be a little bit cheaper because there's huge amounts of oil reserves there, or at least it could be. That value will be passed on. It will actually be utilized properly. Or value could be passed on. It'd be utilized properly. Even if the US does not put a puppet in, it's just someone who's a bit more sane. That's way better for the world. So I can't think that what Trump has done is bad overall, even if there could be bad implications. It's just a good thing for the people of the country, for the world overall, for South America as a whole. I get that the whole cries of socialism, it's not the only thing that matters, and it's an easy watchword to get people hooked. But in this case, it really is quite a big factor. Like a lot of South America is propped up in terms of where it's socialist is propped up by stuff like this. You topple one of these, it makes it harder for the rest of them to stick around. So I think it is better there's many goals implicit here, but for the goal of reducing socialism, for the goal of making the lives of South Americans better, this is a good move, aside from everything else. Let's see what the next thing is. This is a different story. We'll get back to it later. So this is some bad news, right? It certainly seems like it. Breaking: Venezuelan migrants can apply to become refugees in the US, per DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. That sounds really bad, doesn't it? And I think it probably is. Why? What is it? This one says, not only are mass deportations of violent Venezuelan invaders not happening, I'm not sure that's true. I haven't really seen either way any confirmation of that. There are numbers on deportations, and they're not as high as we'd like. Perhaps any of you watching might have better numbers on that. whether we can confirm whether this is happening or not. But if violent offending deportations are happening, then Venezuelans will be among that number. He says the Cheeto Jew administration is going to bring millions more here as fake refugees following America bombing Venezuela. Maybe, but millions seems somewhat unlikely. The thing that's weird about this is why now? Why now would they accept refugees from Venezuela? What I assume will happen now, yes, there'll be some unrest, but it won't last long. And more likely, it will normalize now. I mean, they already have people ready to take over as leadership, and the US is offered to, I think, administer it until they have proper leadership. And, that could go horribly wrong. It could be a puppet, whatever. There's all kinds of things that could happen there. But it's likely to become somewhat stable now. Of course, it doesn't have to be, but it's likely. And so why would they assume that they need to take in refugees? It is a bit suspicious. Maybe someone in chat has a suggestion for why they would say this, other than just the suggested idea here, which is import millions so we can continue the plan of the Democrats, because we're all still just globalists ultimately, which I think is mostly not true, but there's some truth to it. He goes on, by international law, refugees are to seek asylum in one of their 3 nearest countries, not the country giving them the most free gibs. These low IQ parasites, he say, will become a permanent burden on US taxpayers. We've seen this happen. It may well happen again, but I don't know for sure that's what's happening here. And I think he may be jumping to a conclusion. It doesn't look good. And I don't know why. I want an explanation for why this has just become policy. It doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be what he's saying. Say Puppet says, because the pattern is that whenever the US does any military action in any country, the US will always receive refugees and illegals. Well, yes, I mean, you're describing what's happening, but not why it's happening. I assume, Say Puppet, you would mostly agree with this guy, and he might be right, but I think it's probably a bit too clear-cut. There's probably a bit more nuance to it than that. I guess so, Eric. Honest, I think he is being, but I think he's just jumping to a conclusion. So he says, so surely the refugees that are already there can go back, right? You would think so. I assume you mean the refugees that are already in the US from Venezuela can go back. You'd think so. I would hope so, yes. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Garmin says there is video of Maduro loyalists shooting at random people. I don't think that's going to last long. And, maybe it's that. Maybe the US is expecting significant unrest, and they reckon, even though the immigration thing is a big issue and we don't want to look weak on it, we kind of need to clean up, because we've caused this by kidnapping. The immediate aftermath we've caused, so we have to be willing to help clean up. I don't really agree with that, but I could see somewhat of a justification for it. Let's continue, though. Trump drops a chart showing 72% of Somali households. This is a different topic we'll come back to later. So this is related but distant. This guy says, I got arrested for holding an anti-communist sign at the pro-Maduro communist rally in Sydney. He said he chanted USA as he was arrested, and police put him in a stress position, and the one in the photo threatened to break his arm if he kept chanting. And they apparently almost did break his arm. He was released after 40 minutes in custody. Why? Why? The only thing I can think of as a possible justification for this is that the police might have identified him as a potential cause of imminent violence, and so to protect him, they forced him to stop. Now, that is the wrong way to protect someone, but it is a quick and easy way to protect someone if they're the only one doing it. It's lazy and it's immoral, but it is quick and easy. That's the only thing I can think of. It's the only defense I could possibly come up with. And it is unacceptable, in my humble opinion, as far as it's been described here. Now, it is the man pictured, the man involved describing it. So maybe it's not true. But if it is, it's really bad. I don't understand why that happened. This was Sydney, as it says, in Australia. All right, let's continue. Maduro supporters are marching through the streets of Caracas, declaring that revolutionary forces have been mobilized. Now, I was told before stream, and I can well believe this, that the only people really coming out in support of Maduro are those who were directly benefiting from the regime. The support for Maduro wasn't 0%. I mean, the last polls in 2024, I think just before the election, were about 20%. So it's not no one that supports it. And there were some people that were benefiting from it, directly or indirectly. There's going to be some counter-protest. But from what I've heard, again, from our South American correspondent, it is overwhelmingly positive that he's been taken. Thank you for the contribution, Anonymous, who says, this narrative is bogus. Anyone can apply for asylum, but you do the same in any nation. You can apply. It is ambiguous language. I suppose that's true, but it's weird to announce it. Let's watch the little video, though.
La fuerza revolucionaria del pueblo en la calle en defensa
There are literally dozens of us.
del presidente Nicolás Maduro. Aquí nos encontramos en el gran muro de Petare.
They've all got their faces covered. Now, there's two possible reasons for that, chat. Well, more than two, but reason one, we need to protect our identity because we're true revolutionaries and we're going to win and we don't want to be taken down by any bullshit before that happens. We're going to fight and we're going to, etc., etc. Option two, they are so embarrassed that their El Presidente has just been nicked with no casualties that they don't want to show their faces on camera. I think the shame and the just personal shame that this side is going to be feeling at this point is going to make any sort of revolution here short-lived. Thank you, Achilles. Yes, I did change the overlay so that the recording doesn't show chat. If you want to see chat, you can watch the actual stream. But the recording doesn't, because I didn't think it'd be a great idea for things like that, which you can't see in the recording, but you can see live, to show up on stream, but that's fine. Let's go to the next thing. Yeah, this is another story, very odd though. US prosecutor accuses Nicolas Maduro of illegal machine gun possession. Of all the fucking things, of all the things to get him on. But yeah, whatever, fucking add it to the list, I guess. It's not even their jurisdiction. What is even the point of this? This is UA.news. I think this is Ukraine. So I don't know how accurate this is, but let's read it a little bit. US prosecutor Pam Bondi has accused Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro of possessing machine guns in violation of the US National Firearms Act of 1934. Of all the fucking things, especially with the kind of people you want to appeal to, Pam, they're gun owners. They don't like the Firearms Act. I understand why, to some extent. She says this accusation highlights the gravity, or the article says this accusation highlights the gravity of the case and the application of US law beyond its borders. Yeah, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Why would you apply that to someone that's not even a citizen? Let's see if this is true. This might be fucking fake. What are the charges? Illegal weapons counts. So, hold on. Weapons. Charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and 2 illegal weapons counts. Yeah. It'll be that. That's very silly. That's very silly. But whatever, fine. Add it on. You know, he's a bad fucking person. But the same thing goes for Saddam, even Assad to some extent. Yeah, say what you want about how necessary they were, and Gaddafi. Say what you want about how necessary they were to keep their country stable. There's less of a justification there than there is here. They're still bad fucking people. And if you can replace them with someone that can do the job, which does look more likely to happen here, then I don't really mind if you want to add on a few things that are questionably correct, because they're clearly bad fucking people. Find it to force dictators' lawyers to argue against the NFA, wouldn't it just? All right, so that's very strange, but you know, whatever, that's in there. I should do it properly. But it's been pointed out that what they did, thank you, Wolf, what they did in capturing Maduro was not really in line with international law. Thomas Massie has been talking very loudly about this, and I like that Thomas Massie exists. I disagree with some of his positions because I think he's not quite pragmatic enough. I think he's too principled, but I want there to be someone who is that principled, who can give the principled position. He's saying it's not in line with standard, it's not, you know, Congress didn't consent, all this stuff. Understandable, he's probably correct. And it probably isn't in line with international law. But fuck Maduro and fuck international law sometimes, especially when it's only a little bit wrong. It's not like any big country really does follow it. It's there to normalize things to within reasonable bounds. But I've recently been learning with running Cabal that the law as written is not always perfectly appropriate. Sometimes you have to do what's right, even if it's not what's written. I think this was. Again, there are many speculations that there were other motives behind doing this, but I still think it was the right thing to do, even if that's true. Even if Israel are going to get billions in revenue from this, it was still, I think, overall a better thing to remove Maduro from power. Let's go to the next thing, though. This is Iran again. We'll get to that later. Trump sent a warning to the governments of Mexico, Cuba, and Colombia that their countries could be next, according to Axios report. This is the thing, is say what you want about Trump, and there's a lot of criticisms you can make of Trump, but this is the kind of thing, this specifically, is the kind of thing people voted for, is at least throwing your weight around a bit. Corinne, are you trying to just get noticed? Corinne says, Anonymous says, again, ambiguous language. It was an answer to a question. Can they apply? Yes, they can apply. Saying it was an announcement is misleading. I don't know about that. At the very least, it was a news headline. Let's go to the next thing. Reports that several, this is maybe related, I'll cover it quickly. Reports that several US C-17 military transport aircraft are arriving in the UK, cause not yet known. There's a bit more here. US military transport continue to land on UK in large numbers. And then this one, reports of multiple US C-17 Globemaster 3s landing, etc., RAF Fairford, UK. So it's probably just military operations. And the US and UK have not mentioned it. It could be anything, but it probably isn't this. As much as maybe it should be, as much as most of the UK wouldn't mind if Keir Starmer was suddenly gone. Yeah, that kind of thing. Most of us wouldn't mind. That said, we can do it ourselves. Venezuela was in a position where they pretty much couldn't do it themselves. The UK will. We're basically given democracy a few more years to see what we can do with it, because we've got someone lined up who will be better than Keir. May not be good enough, but we've got someone better lined up. We're going to try that, and then if that doesn't work out, don't know. We might go harder. It might be necessary. Yeah, this might happen to Keir anyway. It might happen internally anyway, especially if he keeps trying to cancel democracy, by the way, as he's cancelled a lot of local elections. Either way, we'll talk about that again later. Yeah, so this is an interesting tidbit here. This guy says, reminder that many of the anti-fascist groups that have been attempting a color revolution here in the US have strong ties to Venezuela. They served as election monitors, which is invite only by Maduro, and met with Maduro's officials. Now, the notion that drugs have been smuggled via Venezuela, probably on behalf of China and Russia, I think that's pretty well beyond reproach. That is, I don't think we have strong evidence, but it's pretty obvious to me. That's probably been happening, and probably for a long time. But I think it's more than that. Do you remember the Dominion voting machines? They're owned by, I think, a Venezuelan company, or they were owned by a Venezuelan company. And that's not, of course, all of it, and of course this happening as well. I suspect, though I don't know, that Venezuela has been just the method by which BRICS countries have been laundering influence into the US. Not the only method, but the main one. And I want to make this interesting little point clear. Israel is a threat because of what it wants to do. China is a threat because of what it wants to do. Russia's a threat because of what it wants, etc., etc. They're all threats, but they're not all on the same side as each other. Now, they're all, in some degree, anti-American, yes. But I think that Israel more so wants to use America, which is still not right. And they're maybe more devious in how they do it, but China wants to destroy America, ultimately, I think. Now, they may want them to still be a client, but they want them to no longer be hegemon. They want China to be right in charge. They want China to have the same position America's had for the last 50, at least, years. China wants to do more harm to the US, even if they're not as good at it, though I'm not sure about that, compared to Israel. But they're not on the same side, I don't think. They don't really agree that often. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's how I've seen things. So the influence coming to the US is from multiple sources, but I think the BRICS sources, all the countries in the world, the Middle East, China, Russia, all the other countries that don't like the US, but not Israel, have been working it through Venezuela, I suspect. And now Israel has more power over Venezuela, so of course they're happy about that. They have more influence because they have influence through the US. So of course they'd prefer this. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's all the benefits go to Israel. There's many that go to the US as well, just from the oil, if nothing else. But also from the safety. If this is true, and if this is representative of a pattern, then knocking over Venezuela was such a fucking linchpin move by Trump. There's probably quite a lot of things that will be a lot harder for the globalists to do with this having happened. Now, maybe the globalists as run by BRICS lose power, but the globalists as run by Israel gain power. Don't know. Either way, it's still, a lot of what was being done here is still very wrong through Venezuela, and now it'll probably be much more difficult. It goes on, whenever you see someone cry about regime change, remember many factions are already attempting regime change right here in America, including foreign countries. Maduro was already waging war within the shores of the US. We just finally struck back for the first time. I like that narrative. I'm not sure it's true, but I suspect it is. Kovac Californian says, hey Trump, now that you've brought freedom to Venezuela, I thought you might like to know California has lots of oil and I hear our governor has a public home too. A lot of people want that same service, don't they? And then Anonymous said, I learned recently the oil from Venezuela was also funding leftist groups in Europe and mainly in Spain, as I had heard, so Maduro isn't Fran. Right. It's kind of surprising because the oil was severely under-leveraged. The industry there was, and I watched a video on this recently, was terrible. Something like 10% of the oil potential was leveraged because they kept fucking with it. They kept fucking with the US as well. The US's involvement. It's been decades of this, of them making an agreement and then fucking it up, and making and then fucking it up. Venezuela's been fucking around for a long time, and the US has finally made them find out. And if nothing else, that's enough to justify doing this. So, what's this? Code Pink delegation traveling to Venezuela to observe the December 6th legislative elections. DSA election observers report back, share their experiences. How Venezuela is supporting radical left-wing groups in the US. I have no doubt of this at all. And maybe Venezuela's just doing it themselves. Maybe BRICS are not involved in laundering influence through Venezuela, but why the hell wouldn't they be? Venezuela's been a big ally of BRICS for years. It's probably that. And I mean, as I said, they were under-leveraging the oil. How were they affording to do all this? And they weren't feeding their people, but I don't know if even 10% of Venezuelan oil was enough to send so much into fucking with the US, unless they were a puppet of Russia and China, only allowed to continue to exist because of their influence. I don't know. There's a lot of things this could be, and some of my hypotheses here may be wrong. I'm quite happy to be told of that, but I think there might be something to that.
They're black, of course, which is a shame.
I'm sorry, chat. That wasn't really relevant. I just I like that clip so much. All right, so yeah, here we've got some the Jewish connection. So Venezuela's Nobel Prize winner Maria Corina Machado. It earlier said laureate. I guess she's both. Quote: as soon as we conquer freedom, I will move our Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. It's difficult to find, they say, a US war that doesn't in some way benefit Israel. So I'm with people on the skepticism of Israel here. But I'm not with them to the extent that if Israel is involved, it must be bad. It doesn't always work that way. The US and Israel, for however bad this may be, are allies. And they do share intelligence. If the US stopped being allies with Israel, it might be overall better in the long run, but they would immediately lose access to intel, access to some infrastructure, that kind of thing. So there are some benefits, even though I don't think overall it's beneficial. But I don't know for sure. But there are some benefits. So they are allies. They're working together. And if they both want something, then it's more likely to happen than if only one of them wants it. So the simplest answer could just be that. They both benefit from it, so it went ahead. It doesn't necessarily mean Israel's puppeteering the US, though a lot of people feel that, and understandably so. There is far too much of that, though I don't know how absolute it is. Trump has always seemed like he supports them more than he should, but he's not willing to be a puppet, though sometimes it seems like he may have been forced to be. So there's this, but as I mentioned earlier, Trump has said that she shouldn't be the leader. So there's debate here about whether this was just Israel puppeteering move. I suspect in this case it was just that Israel agreed. It wasn't just that Israel snapped its fingers and then it happened. It was Israel just agreed it was a good idea. Of course, with the US being so pro-Israel, with Israel being involved in some way, they are going to want to do some pro-Israel shit there. And Israel may have set up, through intelligence means, various agents and individuals in the opposition party there who are friendly to Israel and are going to do pro-Israel things. That probably also means that they'll be friendly to the US ultimately. Now, here's a hypothesis. We all know that Israel has good intelligence. In terms of intelligence agency, however immoral it might be, they are seemingly competent, seemingly perhaps too competent. Many people believe that Israelis and Jews have an inherent tendency towards covert, subversive moves and behaviors, wouldn't that make them good at infiltrating organizations? Is it possible that the US is using that connection for their benefit? Now, I think, obviously, Israel has way too much influence for that to be true. Israel should really be a vassal of the US, not the other way around, as more it seems. But if Israel is just so good at infiltrating everything because of their genetic bonus, that you couldn't not ally with them because they would just be everywhere and they'd be against you, would you still then rather be opposed to them? Would you still then rather just go without? I mean, it's a useful asset to have. And if that's the trade-off, I'm not saying it's worth it, but I'm saying it's a factor. I can see why some people might like it. But I think probably overall, it is better for the US to get out of the thumb of everyone and to just run its own destiny, even for a while, even if just for a while, but probably permanently as well. But I can see some arguments for it. Breaking Israeli publication Israel Hayom says it was Israel that pushed Trump to bring about regime change in Venezuela. He says every time without exception, wow, maybe this is true. Maybe it was completely, Israel just snapped their fingers and made it happen. That is a possibility. But maybe it's true that Israel is just trying to take credit. I mean, like, what better way to demoralize people who consider anything Israel involved to be anti-American than to take credit for everything? It's a pretty common strategy, especially with, I think we've observed before that the Klaus Schwab organization, either way, various NGOs, they take credit for things, they take credit for people, they associate themselves with people. And sometimes that is because they are associated, but sometimes it's, I think, to try to capture that territory, to claim them so that you can't support them anymore, to turn you off them, to make the only support that they can get the support that they've just received from that subversive group. Don't forget, chat, people like this think, and perhaps they've written a lot of parts of this, but they think that by opposing Israel so strongly and so knee-jerkedly, that they are anti-Israel. But they are also acting predictably about Israel in response to Israel's actions. And you know what that is? That's control. That is arguably controlled opposition, whether he knows it or not, controlled opposition to Israel, controlled proposition to whatever else. Jumping at shadows, not saying that's what this is, by the way, but to be cautious of, jumping at shadows is just as bad as never jumping at a shadow. Or never jumping at a threat, either way. Be proportionate. Make sure that you're right on something before you just jump at it. Don't just go by theme. Don't just go by who's involved. You'll plummet a bit deeper than that. And if something is the state of the world, there's usually a reason for it beyond just evil people being evil. It's easy to make arguments like this, but that's why it's so tempting, and that's why it's so easy to control people that do. All Israel has to do is say, yes, that was me, and suddenly they don't support Trump's move, even if it was a good move. Don't be played by either side. Don't be controlled by either side. Independently think. Don't rush to a conclusion either. Please don't rush to conclusions. Please be willing and open to both sides before rushing. It's cooler to have a conclusion, and it's sometimes cooler to be pessimistic and doomsaying. But I'm not interested in what's cool. I'm interested in what's true. And I invite you to be so as well. Most of you already are, I accept. But I believe that's the better way to do it. Let's go to the next thing. Will he restore diplomatic relations with Israel and establish Venezuela's embassy location in Jerusalem as President Trump did? Certainly, she says, I believe it's her. Venezuela will be Israel's closest ally in Latin America. We rely on Israel's support in dismantling Maduro's crime regime and in the transition to democracy. Together, we'll lead a global struggle against crime and terror. The Venezuelan people deeply admire Israel and will always defend its right to live in peace without a threat to its existence. Very cheesy, simping behavior there. Excuse me, goes along with what I said already. Israel is certainly a lot more involved in this than they should be. But again, is that because that they are competent enough to infiltrate and that was actually useful in the end? It probably is something like that, but it's still more than I'm comfortable with. Let's go to the next thing. So we had that. So what this is. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee says the U.S. takeover of Venezuela is good for Israel. It's kind of good for everyone except Russia and China. Oh, and Canada. We have a thing on that later.
Let's bring in U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, and it's going to make sense why we're bringing him on in just a moment, because what happens in Venezuela, what happens in Israel.
God damn, he looks so different. Is that really him? I think it looks like the same guy, but he looks so different. I think last time I saw his face was about 10 years ago. He looks so different. Are we sure that's the same guy?
Everything's connected. Iran. First off, let me ask you this, Ambassador. Your reaction when you saw what happened with the military and law enforcement operation in Venezuela.
Well, my first reaction, Rob, was to say, praise the Lord and thank you, President Trump. A lot of people may not make the connection as to why this matters to us in the Middle East. What they don't know is that Hezbollah is very active in Venezuela. There has been a 20-year partnership between Iran and Venezuela under both the two previous dictators. The ties are deep, and Hezbollah operates in 12 different countries throughout South America.
I'd like to point out, Mike, you've got an American flag in the background there. Why is Israel your primary and seemingly only concern?
It is not just a threat in the Western Hemisphere. It is a threat to the Middle East. So for the president to go after Venezuela not only deals with narco-terrorism and the many deaths of Americans who are killed by the poison of drugs, it is going to make life for those of us living in the Middle East much better, much safer to take Maduro out, to recognize that Hezbollah is active here, targeting not just Jewish people in all over South America, but using those tentacles to ultimately reach into the United States. This is good news for America, good news for the world.
It probably is better for everyone, but as I say, that's not the only motive. There's going to be plenty of other motives there. Aiden is saying one of 5 countries without a central Rothschild bank. That very well could be it. You got to ask though, is it beneficial for that to be the case, or is it better for the world for it to have one or for it to not have one? We can't just settle on, but there's a scheme, therefore it's evil. I'm not sure. Maybe it is worse for there to be one there. Maduro banned Street. Yeah, we'll get onto that in a minute. Dictators tend to ban a lot of things that are not good for immediate, for like the material benefit of a nation. Things which, like pornography. They ban those things not just for good reasons. They can ban them for selfish reasons as well. So again, it's you can't just get the theme of why something's happening and look at everything about it. So Chinese Communist Party linked nonprofit is behind today's pro-Maduro anti-Trump protest in New York City. That's not too surprising. The People's Forum has admitted to receiving over $20 million from Neville Singham, an individual with well-documented ties to the CCP and living in Shanghai. Imagine that, the communists are mad at Trump arrested their communist tyrant. He says these funds were funneled by shell companies and donor-advised funds per a House committee report released in 2025. That's not too surprising, to be honest. The People's Forum has incited protests and riots across the US, including violent demonstrations against immigration and customs enforcement and disruptive occupations of college campuses across the US. This is the kind of warfare that's actually real warfare today. It's no longer invasion except by third worlders. It's never up front. It's always culture war, it's subversion. That is the face of warfare today. Hosted events and courses pushing CCP propaganda, glorifying the Chinese Revolution and partnering with pro-PRC groups.
So loud that the war criminals in Washington hear you. Hands off Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela!
Their hands are off. They got him. It's over. I mean, it's not. The hands are going to be still on it because they're going to want to influence how it rebuilds. For better or for worse. Probably both.
Hands off Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela! Stop the bombings right now!
By the time he was saying this, I have no doubt the bombings had already stopped. It's not bombings you need to be worried about. It's the cultural, social, and economic reconstruction that the US is going to be involved in, and Israel probably going to be involved in as well, that you want to be worried about now. That's the bit you should be concerned about. But yeah, everyone has influence. Well, everyone. Lots of countries have influence groups in the US, and they have got way too powerful. Perhaps you could even say the US has been behind in this market, though I'm not sure they have. Maybe they just let it happen too much at home, or that it's not something that's easy to defend against. So it's easy to commission it against other countries. It's not easy to defend against. I'm not sure. Some mix of factors, but it's certainly very effective in the US, unfortunately. Maybe because it is a free country, and that makes it somewhat vulnerable to these kinds of attacks. Next up, yes, US Senate to vote to block military action against Venezuela next week. Just in the nick of time. Well done, guys. Well, that is arguably evidence that they didn't know this was going to happen, which is probably true. I expect that Trump had a pretty small circle of people that knew this was going to happen. But I mean, it's not strong evidence of that. It's just suggestive. This guy says, Las Vegas Venezuelans throw Venezuela Libre party to celebrate Maduro's capture. The Venezuelan community in Sin City is buzzing, throwing a Venezuela Libre party tonight at 7 p.m. to mark the big win of Maduro and Celia Flores getting captured in that US. That's his wife, by the way. They were captured together. Hosted by the Fundación Cultural Venezuela at Allure Gardens LV, Boulevard, etc., etc. Where is this? Las Vegas. Okay. Venezuela's finally free. So there's most of what I've seen is celebratory of this in terms of like public events. Next thing. Okay, so this guy is saying, okay, so Trump says, the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11, Mar-a-Lago, etc., etc. We'll watch that in a few minutes, actually. May not be in the recording, but we'll probably watch that. Now, this guy has some commentary, and I thought it was interesting. He says, good news and bad news. Good news for the end of the narco state. Bad news for the Canadian economy. Canadians have no idea what this means for our oil industry and economy. A US-friendly president will be installed. That pretty much goes without saying, and it's probably for the best as well. The US will lift sanctions from Venezuela and heavy crude oil will be imported into the US. It will significantly increase the leveraging of oil from Venezuela, and it will probably be quite a cheap way to get it too. Meaning Canada's primary customer for crude, the US, will now have cheaper options available. By Canada not pushing through with Keystone XL, expansion to Asia and Europe will cost us dearly, they say. Trump wanted Keystone XL. He mentioned it several times earlier this year, and now he's got something bigger and better, the biggest oil reserves on Earth. This was the key leverage we had on CUSMA, I guess some sort of North American economic agreement, the US dependency on our oil. Now that's gone. Carney took too long to negotiate. Trump likely realized that Canada will never supply the quantities of oil and gas the US wants and needs, and instead he diversified. He says, I know this is going to make Carney sweat. It's not good news for Canada's economy. We had a potential for a monopoly and we blew it, he says. That may be true. Canada, your leader, does not seem fit for purpose and never did, nor your previous one. So I encourage you, as I would encourage my fellow countrymen, replace him. There you go. It is bad news. I think this guy's probably right for Canada. It's good news for everyone that needs oil, though, pretty much, because as I said, the oil, it's the biggest oil reserve in the world, and they are significantly underutilized. Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro is surrounded by dozens of agents as he exits a plane at New York's Stewart Airport.
Surrounded by federal agents, that appears to be the Venezuelan president who was captured in an overnight U.S. military operation from Caracas.
A lot of agents. I mean, you want to be sure, don't you? You want to be really sure. It could be, you never know. Someone could try and martyr him, especially if they've got Chinese intelligence, competent nations who knew this advice was going to happen. They don't know they're not about to be attacked. So just surrounding him with bodies, I guess, if you have to move him, it's not a bad idea, but surely an armored vehicle would be better. Not sure. Either way, there were a couple of contributions a few minutes ago that I didn't get around to reading. I'll get to them after the recording. Please let me know. Please remind me if I forget you.
Venezuela brought here to the United States now to face narco-terrorism charges.
He's walking strangely. Maybe his legs are also cuffed. Skip ahead a bit, see if anything else interesting happens. Yeah, they go inside.
Story.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of armed. There's a lot of people there with guns as well. So it looks like it was done pretty well, pretty properly. Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei has been whisked away. Again, different story. We'll get to that later. That's again different. So, okay, Venezuela timeline. It seems like it's probably reductive, but I expect this is largely true. So a little bit of history here, simplified history. 1982, they became the third richest country in the hemisphere, I think because of oil. 97 became the second largest purchaser of F-150. 2001, voted for socialist president income equality. 2004, private healthcare is completely socialized. 2007, all higher education becomes, quote, free. 2009, socialists banned private ownership of guns. 2012, Bernie Sanders praised their American dream. 2014, opposition leaders are imprisoned. 2016, food and healthcare shortages become widespread. 2017, constitutional elections are suspended. 2019, unarmed citizens massacred by own government. Yep, and then you got a picture here, the same shop before and after Maduro's socialism in Venezuela. Again, that might not be true, that's what it's showing, but this is what you'd expect given socialism. So yeah, to be clear, it's not all about socialism. This thing, obviously, oil is a big factor as well, and there's many other things too, but socialism is a factor. It's literally better for the people of Venezuela, and that is an important factor. Democrat Congress reps are already defending Nicolas Maduro and condoning, I think he means condemning, Donald Trump for ordering in military strikes without congressional approval. Meanwhile, here is every military strike done under Joe Biden without congressional approval, 170 of them. Yemen, 70 airstrikes, 60 Houthi targets. Syria, multiple facilities targeted. Iraq, 85 targets struck. Syria, 85 targets struck. Yemen, ongoing campaign with multiple waves of strikes. Total strikes, many. Zero congressional approval for any of those, apparently. Interesting notion. I'm not sure that's true. Is there anything here? This guy is disagreeing on it. I'm not sure if there's anything to that. I'd have to look into what exactly congressional approval requires and whether these things really had it. It would be quite complicated. Suffice to say, there is at least some question on whether this really is an unusual diversion from normal powers. Next thing, Fox News guest Julian Epstein, great choice there, says Venezuelans yearn to be free from President Maduro and the result of Trump's war could be very welcome liberation of the Venezuelan people and dancing in the streets. And then this guy says, every time we start a regime change war, there's always a Berg, Witz, Baum or Stein on TV telling you the citizens we're currently attacking are yearning for freedom. And yeah, that is a Stein saying that. But is it wrong? Again, he's not saying it is, but the theme is, oh dear, a Jew said a thing which lines up with certain other things. But is it wrong? Is it incorrect? Probably not. I don't think there's many in Venezuela who are actually happy about this. And the citizens we're currently attacking, as he says, what citizens that the US attacked? There might have been a few military officers at like AA points that were hit. But that's it. It was just the bare minimum to go and pick up Maduro and take him home. Not home. Take him away, whisk him away. It was not actually, it was an act of war, arguably, but it was barely war. Barely warfare at all. He was already so disliked by his people. It was almost just mercenary work. Pro bono mercenary work for the people of Venezuela. So yeah, you got to consider both sides of it there. I'm certainly uneasy how many Israeli-looking people are involved at certain positions of power here, and all of the narratives about what Israel wants from this may well be true. That does not change whether it's an overall good or bad thing, and I think it is overall a good thing. Next thing, the US does not have a somewhat mixed record with toppling dictators. That's the fake news for you. We have a fairly conclusive record of failure. We can't even run our own government. There's some truth to this, yes. Now, that said, this is a bit different. I know that's probably been said before, but this is a bit different in that Trump's approach is different than previous presidents. It's less cowardly, to be quite frank. And you see with the Middle East, you go in, you topple, and then they just stayed there and tried to take control. And there's many other reasons why that probably was. The poppy fields in Afghanistan, for one thing. The oil, obviously, another factor. And just the position on the chessboard relative to Russia and China. But there's also the fact to just maintain chaos in the region, to maintain the justification to send US arms there so that the arms manufacturers can keep making more arms and keep making money. Military industrial complex. That's all probably true. In this case, Trump could have started a forever war, but he didn't. Same thing with Ukraine. They did start Forever War. Trump's actually seemingly trying to end it. With this, they could have started the Forever War. Well, it wouldn't have taken that long, but they could have started some fucking violence that no one would have wanted, that would have been bad for everyone, but good for the military-industrial complex. But he didn't. He just took the head out. He didn't even kill him, just took him away. It's such a light touch way to end the conflict, and no one's stopping him. Very few people are really against it, at least in the country, and those that are against it for reasons that don't really relate to the sort of direct military aspect of it. I'm sure that those who were against this would have far rather this happened than that it was a new Forever War, and it could have been. He could have done it, but he didn't. So this could be different. I'm not saying it will be. And yes, the US has a mostly bad record, and in many cases it's gone very badly at regime change. We'll see what this one does. It might be just as bad. It might very well be just as bad. But this one has a chance of being different from the others. We'll see. Next one up. This one says, will the Republicans pass a Venezuelan aid package before passing anything meaningful on affordability or healthcare? Now, I think he's coming at this from a leftist perspective. The affordability and healthcare priorities are not really the priorities of affordability, yeah, but mostly the economy just being stronger, which is needed. But healthcare, amending it, like repairing it maybe, but not providing it. Either way, maybe he's coming from left, maybe he's coming from right here. Either way, this may be true. Most of the supporters, most of the voters think it is. And it's trendy to be pessimistic these days, and often correct, but not always. And I think it's maybe jumping to a conclusion here. I just put unsure because I wanted to see the results. I think that's probably what most people did vote for, unsure for, but it might be this, yes. The thing is that one argument I could give in favor of actually doing this, if it does happen, not that I'm supporting it, but an argument in favor of it is it's simpler. It's simpler to fund the restoration of a nation, just throw money at them, than it is to repair some of the quite nuanced problems at home. That said, there are some problems at home in the US which probably are quite easy to fix. There are still some fix everything immediately or easily buttons that could be pressed, or at least there are some small ones, some easy wins that could be made. At least they seem to be. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but this might happen. It would be a bit disappointing if it did, but it might not be completely unjustified. Still, it shouldn't be. It should go to things that are needed at home. Next up, Venezuela sits on a fifth of the world's oil. Countries with the largest proven crude oil reserves. This is just to fill out the montage of why all this is happening. To a large extent, oil is a factor, even if it's not the only one. Venezuela with, 303 billion barrels. I think it is. It doesn't actually, in billion barrels, 203 billion barrels of oil. That's quite a lot. That's 19.4%, about 20%, a fifth of the total amount of oil in the world. Saudi Arabia second, Iran third, Iraq fourth, Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Russia. I think is that Libya? I think it's Libya. I think so. And then US down there in, I think that's ninth. So yeah, there you go. That's part of the reason. And now here's the very important intel on what the US is up to. Most pizzerias nearby the Pentagon are now reporting below average traffic, except for Pizzato Pizza, apparently. Freddy's Beach Bar, the closest gay bar to the Pentagon, has surged in traffic. What this means is that the feds are taking some time off. Because when they're working, they need pizza to fuel their work. I could do with some pizza, actually. I'm quite hungry. Don't do it, Aiden. But when they get off work, they all go to the gay bars. Which is a bit disappointing, isn't it? Either way, that's what you see. Any establishment that requires attendance will surge when they're off. Any establishment that sends something somewhere else will surge when they're on. Aiden says, but don't send me a pizza. I mean, if you force a pizza to be sent to my place, I will eat it. But I'm not asking you to do so. For those that missed it, Aiden has sent pizzas to my house, because she visited here briefly a few months ago. Sent pizzas to my house once, or was it twice? I was mostly joking and she just ordered it for me anyway. It's very generous, very funny. But hey, I've got food. But if you want to send me a pizza, I'll eat it on stream for chat. For those wondering, we're currently in a recording session where we're focused on politics, but stick around, come join for the actual stream. There's loads of audience interaction. It's very dynamic, all kinds of funny shit happens. This is just very focused on politics. So let's continue for now, but I'll respond to stuff in a few minutes. This guy says, really worrying if China and Russia stop their record of strictly abiding by international law because of this. Oh no! Yeah, the point is fair. The US didn't strictly abide by international law here. As if fucking anyone else does. I don't know of any examples off the top of my head. It's not my area, and I'm not that good at remembering things anyway, but I'm sure Russia and China don't. I mean, there's probably loads of examples you could pick on where they fucking don't. So yeah, it's a bit silly to be focusing too much on that. It's not a huge deal if the US don't fully abide by international law. Let's be honest, the biggest denomination of human order is the nation state. Within the nation state, you have established order. You have a monopoly on force. You have laws. It doesn't always work, but that's what's supposed to work canonically, and in practice, it certainly can be. That's the canonical largest division of order that we have as humans. The world is not a nation state. It doesn't work that way. You don't have a monopoly on force across the whole world. It would be bad if we did. Thus, international law is mostly voluntary. It's enforced by other nations. And who can enforce international law on the world hegemon? Very few countries. If all of BRICS got together and most of Europe got together and said, bad US, it would still be debatable whether the US would pay any fucking attention to that at all. Even if they started doing practical things. So it doesn't really matter. International law is useful as a reference point, but not following it doesn't really fucking matter. And sometimes it's right not to. Especially because it wasn't written, always, by the best people for writing law. Often written by the kind of people that run NGOs. Next up, Nathaniel Rothschild posted out his utter joy at Venezuela's, quote, liberation. Quote, not quote. It goes on, things that were previously banned in Venezuela, but now he and his international crime syndicate can introduce and profit from. Rothschild controls central bank, usury, porn, homosexual marriage, homosexual child adoption, and so much more. Yeah, this is certainly, at least on the surface, a big downside. It might indeed happen. The Venezuelan people will have some influence over this, as always people do, but probably not that much. If it's a US puppet, and especially if they mostly do what the people want, they'll be able to slip these things in. Like the lubed dildo of evil. It'll slip in. And that's generally bad. But you could extract some upsides from it. You could reduce the perceived upside of it having been banned in the first place. This stuff is banned by Maduro, not because it's evil. It's banned by Maduro not because he wanted to reduce Jewish influence, although that might have been a factor as well. But like the reasons that many of you don't like this stuff, and I agree, most of this stuff is bad. And the reasons we wouldn't like this stuff are probably not the same reasons Maduro banned them. He probably banned them because they aren't manifestly beneficial for a regime like his. And the thing is, I'm sure that he and his supporters would have been allowed to do any of these things had they wanted to, or some of these things had they wanted to. Do you think Maduro never did any of the things that he banned from his people doing that might now be allowed? It's not so much that they were considered immoral or a bad idea. It's just that they weren't useful to the regime. Now, you could say that that's true of the West. They aren't useful to the West either. And yeah, probably not. So we should ban them or reduce them at least for our own reasons. And maybe this won't happen in Venezuela, but it probably will. That said, these things are, unfortunately, arguably competitive. You kind of need at least some of these things to be competitive as a nation on the world stage. We would all like it, wouldn't we, chat? We would all like it if usury was never needed. Maybe we could just use the gold standard. Maybe we could just have, simple systems. Maybe even a monarchy. Everyone likes a nice king. It's very optimistic. It's very nice. It would be great if we could just have a confederacy. Everything abides by what is best for the people's individual rights. That would be nice. But, unfortunately, that's not very realistic. Usury has, unfortunately, I suspect, become necessary. Because it's one of those things, and there's loads of examples of this in human history, technologies and methods, where there's many, many ways to do it wrong, and they're catastrophic. But there's just a few ways where if you just do it right, it's slightly beneficial. And if one person starts to master doing it right and gets a benefit from it, now everyone has to. I'm afraid to say, chat, we are well beyond the point where usury can just be ignored and removed. Gold standard's the same thing. It's not a bad system for stability. It has major downsides in the modern economy. It doesn't work. So the same thing with porn. I'm not defending on that basis. That's a bit more debatable. But at the same time, if you have that market, it is part of the economy. Are you going to shut out part of the economy? Perhaps we should. Perhaps it's better. And perhaps you'd have a more moral population who don't have as powerful a nation. And so in the end, they can't afford to maintain that morality. I'm afraid to say there are arguments that it's not possible to avoid doing some of these things. And not all of these things, but some of these things. You've got to unfortunately consider some things that are wrong regardless can be used for power. And so if it's going to happen from someone, it's going to happen from everyone. That might be the case for some of this. And that I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm going to make that very clear, because a lot of people will jump to conclusions and will think I'm taking one side or the other and will themselves take one side or the other reflexively. I am not taking a side on this. I just want to make clear that there are other factors besides the obvious. I am against these things morally as well. Pragmatically, it is unfortunately sometimes a different story. Next point. This one says, wow, Venezuelans are lined up outside Mar-a-Lago thanking President Trump with both the USA and Venezuelan flag. The fake news won't show this. The people are grateful. The people want freedom. Unfortunately, it being outside Mar-a-Lago and it being relatively few people and this being a still image makes me think, this isn't really indicative of anything. The sample size is too small. But it's probably indicative of something. We can't really use it as evidence. Again, JK, I'm not taking a side. I just think that is an important factor. I think coping would be if I said it's okay because, but no, what I said is true. It's not favorable and it's not nice, but I believe it is true, unavoidably. Not for all those points either, but for some of them. This guy says, Thomas Massey is going nuclear on Trump's regime change war. Oh, for fuck's sake. Aiden has ordered me a pizza. Thanks, Aiden. I appreciate it. I have food. I could make something after the stream. But she's fucking done it. Well, I better have finished the recording by then, I guess. She says, say what kind of pizza it is. Be specific. Why? I'm doing a recording right now. I'll finish the recording and then I'll say it. We're relatively near the end now. I'll get through it first. Remind me when we're done, okay? Okay, so, quote, how did it work out in Cuba, Libya, Iraq, or Syria? Good questions. Do we want another Afghanistan in the Western Hemisphere? Good question. This is all about oil and regime change. I think that's actually more surface level than the real reasons, but those are in there. Quote, previous presidents told us to go to war over WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, that did not exist. That's actually not really true. There weren't nukes, but according to what I've heard, and I think some of this was from Hitch, there were WMDs, just not the ones that were generally advertised. There were some chemical weapons, I think. So apparently there were some, not the ones that were advertised and not as much as was advertised. It was a pretense, but it wasn't completely false. Just a minor point there. It goes on, now it's the same playbook, except we're told that drugs are the WMDs. But is that wrong? I suspect it's not. In this case, it might be. I'm open to seeing reasons to think so, but I think it probably is true. It goes on, quote, James Madison warned us that in no part of the Constitution is more wisdom to be found than in the clause which confides the question of war and peace to the legislature, not the executive. Possibly. I think, unfortunately, that is not something that we can just say clear-cut is good or bad in either direction. I think kind of case-by-case basis. The fact that Trump just nabbed the leader and left, it's the best you could possibly ask for, really, in terms of toppling a dictatorship. He didn't start a forever war, and he could have done. He says, the framers understood a simple truth: to the extent that war-making power devolves to one person, liberty dissolves. Possibly. And it's not really war, is it? It is an act of war, and it's sort of war, but such a minor example. It is not really what is meant by war. The people are probably going to just settle now. They're just going to settle down and be happy with the different leader. It's not really war, Massey. I think you'd be right if this was a forever war, if it was a fucking invasion of some country no one cares about. It's not really that. I don't think it quite applies as well here. He says, by escalating towards war, we would predictably create countless refugees. I mean, that's possibly true, but the US doesn't have to take them. For some reason it is, or at least there was a press release saying that they could apply for it. Don't know exactly what's going on there, but they don't have to take them. Yeah, conflict creates refugees, but there might not be much conflict in Venezuela following this because most of the population wanted this, at least as far as the indications we have show. He says, are we prepared to receive swarms of the 25 million Venezuelans who will likely become refugees? I doubt it'll be anywhere near that. Am I missing something, chat? How would there be that many? Most of Venezuela is fine with this. I think it'll settle down quite quickly, especially if the democratically elected leader is put in position. It's a great way, like democracy or not, it's a great way to get people to settle down. Put the one they wanted in charge. So I think, again, Massey is very principled. And I definitely think there should be someone like him around talking that we hear, that we listen to. But I think he is unfortunately too principled and he's not factoring pragmatism in enough. And this is maybe one of those examples. But I do respect what he's saying and respect his input. And he may be more right here than I'm giving him credit for. I'm willing to be proven wrong on that. Let's go to the next thing. Yeah, this is disappointing. This is not directly related to Venezuela, but it's around the same time. So, Pam Bondi says, we will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech. Why? Is that what we fucking voted for? What the fuck are you doing, Pam?
There's free speech and then there's hate speech.
Fucking kill yourself.
And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society. Do you see?
Yeah, that's fucking wrong. That is just wrong. And this is a great example of you can't always get what you want. You can't always get all of what you want. We voted for Trump not because he's perfect, but because he's better than the alternatives. And I believe he is. Say what you want. He's done many good things. He's done a lot of bad things, but they're probably not as bad as what the opposition would have done. You can't expect to just win. You can't expect to just get everything you want. You get a lot of little wins, which is what we've had, which is what Trump promised. But it's never over. This is welcome to reality. Welcome to the world. It's an ongoing war to get what's right. And in many cases, you shouldn't win because what's right isn't what's best either. Unfortunately, that's not always the same thing. You can't expect to win every time, but we can get wins and we can make progress. We're making much more progress today than we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So don't get blackpilled on stuff like this. It's wrong. Frankly, she should go. She should be replaced. And she should have been replaced a long time ago. That Trump keeps her on is disappointing. And that has happened before where he's spoken in support of someone that he's then removed. I don't know if he's going to. I don't think he will. But I don't like her. I've seen enough. I think she should go. She's done a few things that were fine, but she's done enough things I think she should go. Others in the administration seem fine. The Stephen Miller, despite being Jewish, he seems fine. Rubio seems fine. There's a few others as well. Pam Bondi can go. Saying this, that's not what American people voted for. That's contrary to the fucking Constitution. You should go. Next thing. Oh yeah, there was this picture. So the commentary here, I'll read it, I guess. He says, the Trump administration can bomb foreign countries' boats and arrest foreign leaders, but cannot send a single Democrat traitor, deep state saboteur, or deport a Somali fraudster. Why do you think that is? True. Fair point. They should have been much hastier dealing with problems at home. I agree. However, you can't just arrest and execute Hillary and Bill Clinton without some evidence. You could, but it would be horrendously unjust. Now, if you did that, a lot of America would be happy with it, but a lot of America would be it would give such fucking casus belli for your opponent to raise armies to riot against you. It would cause such unrest. I think it would be the not so smart choice, and it would be for vengeance. They have less power now than they used to. They are less priority targets than they used to be, and I would like to see it. I'd like to see them punished, but it may not be the most practical idea. That said, Maduro. No one fucking liked him except your international enemies who already fucking hate you. So it's an easier choice. Now, Bill and Clinton are being pursued. Bill and Hillary, they are being pursued. It's not as much as we'd like, but they're being summoned to hearings which would be about Epstein. It would be about stuff that they are directly involved in. And they refuse to turn up. And they're being charged with contempt of Congress, I think. It is. Things are happening, but with at least with powerful figures at home, you need to do it properly, to do it justly, for the appearance that gives, and also because otherwise they can fucking snake out of it, or they can escape before being punished or something. If you can do it through justice, you significantly reduce the casus belli, significantly reduce the unrest it causes. Now, Trump hasn't done anywhere near enough. He should already be pursuing everyone involved in the Epstein files. And I honestly don't know why he isn't. There are some hypotheses that aren't quite as accusatory, but I'm not sure if that's true. I think there's probably some bad reason. He may have been leveraged. That's maybe the best thing we can do there, but it's not as good as we'd like. But there is progress being made on some of these people. At least, maybe it's just perfunctory, but at least that's something. Perfunctory can eventually lead to pragmatic. Somali Forster, I think it may be too early to see movement on that. They should all be deported or whatever else. And maybe they will be, but it's a little bit too early to say that hasn't happened or that it's never going to happen. It might still. But again, justice you may need to go through the process of making sure through proper trial and then deport them. But the reason I brought this up is not to comment on this, although it is interesting. But just to say that this image was going around, and it doesn't look good. Does it look like he's been fucking beaten? He's got blood all over his shirt. Why would they do that? Well, there's a clue, chat, in this image, and it's here. This is the clue. What do you see there, chat? What is it? You have to be ready to see things like this. Do you have to know what to look for? Yeah. In case it wasn't clear, this is an AI image. I see a pair of tits. Of course you do, Ghost. For those watching on the recording, the live stream is currently seeing a big pair of tits right here. All right, next thing. Torburn now, who his input is very valued, but he and I have quite a different starting point for all this stuff. He says, the fact it's so transparently obvious and in our faces is the point. The humiliation ritual is baked in. I've never been totally sort of bought in on the humiliation ritual idea. It probably is true to some extent, but I think people make a bigger deal of it than it needs to. It could also just be marketing. Could be that simple. He says, Bibi makes his 5th visit and sir, yes, sir, means bombs are dropping within 72 hours. It could be that. Or it could be that the US just wanted to consult with allies before doing what they wanted to do anyway. Either is compatible with the data, and yeah, it could be both, genuinely. I'm not siding with one or the other, but when someone's giving one side, I prefer to give the other, even if I don't agree with either side completely. He says, meanwhile, you don't even feel safe going to your local Walmart anymore because a feral third world savage might chimp out on your family. That is true for some places in America, yes. And some places here too. Well, except that we don't have Walmarts. He says, we can mobilize our military to invade a foreign nation by darkness and capture its leader, but some Jewish judge said the 75 IQ savages can't be removed from your neighborhood. Sorry. The reason for that is that Venezuela was already in a state of chaos. Well, chaos, either way, tyranny. It was already, the rule of law didn't really matter. It was just by force. In the US, you still have, despite the fact that there's a lot of chaos, a lot of unrest, a lot of fuckery, it is still, technically, by category, yes or no, it is still a civilized country. I'm not saying it is as civilized as it should be, just yes or no, yes, it is a civilized, it's not an anarchy, it's not a rule by fear. It's not a full-on tyranny. You still have rule of law. Now, often it's not followed. Often it's followed wrong. Often it's whatever else, ignored, disobeyed, whatever, subverted. But you do still have that. And so if you just act in a tyrannical way, if you say, well, the judge said the 75 IQ savages back on the street, just arrest them. You break some of the assumptions, and in the short term, it would be right. That is wrong. They should end up being arrested and put in prison for that. But that's right in the short term, but in the long term, you break guarantees that maintain that civilization. I'm not saying necessarily that Trump shouldn't take executive action on some things. On some things he should. But the more you do it, the less you can, you burn capital, political capital, and you also may sacrifice things that are necessary for the stability of your nation going forward. It's unfortunately a bit of a balancing act. Now, that said, he could be doing more. He's got a lot more political capital, or had a lot more political capital that he could have used, especially with Charlie Kirk. around that time. He could have done a lot with that, and he didn't. So I'm not taking one side clearly here, but there are reasons. Like, the US is comprised of states. It is, in fact, a union of states, much like the EU. It's just a better one than the EU. If the federal government goes, we're overriding states' rules here, even though they are a properly appointed judge who's reached their position through the means we've established as the right way of doing it, we don't like their ruling, we're just going to go in and nab them, arrest them, and overrule the whole thing. We would like that. It would be better in the short term. The US might be better off if you just did that across the board, but you might not expect the downsides that would come with it. You might not expect the fucking secessions that would come with it. You might not expect the guarantees lost and the fact that the Democrats will just do that next time themselves anyway. Now, the best way to solve that is to solve election rigging, because the Democrats won't get in anyway. But there is an argument not to do things that are tyrannical, even when the opponent is. And if you can solve these things by the proper method, even if it takes longer, it is way more stable to do that. So I'm not saying that's Trump's reason either. But if it was me, I wouldn't necessarily just go heavy-handed even on things that are definitely wrong. But yeah, it's a complex issue. Torba is generally correct to be this concerned. It definitely looks hypocritical. But capturing Maduro was pretty simple. I expect complex military, but it was all by the books. You find the anti-air, which you just do through intelligence. Like, there's a lot of people put a lot of effort in. It's complicated, but conceptually it's simple. What the right thing to do is, broadly, is simple. The approach is simple. The approach for fixing the US is massively complicated, and every single option has massive downsides. This was a pretty easy answer. This was the fix everything button for Venezuela, and Trump pressed it. In the US, a lot of the problems are more complex than that. And granted, not necessarily all of them. I don't agree with Trump on everything, but some of the things I think he's not doing because they're more complicated than this was. Next thing. Okay, this is Trump's statement.
Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II.
Yes, Firekeeper, but more. Nacho says they bombed the mausoleum. They did not bomb the mausoleum. As far as I heard, that was unfortunately a misreporting. They bombed something very nearby, which is a military outpost. I assume anti-air, bombing it to prevent it from being used against the helicopters. So yeah, that's it's an excerpt from Trump's statement anyway. It's a bit more. This is a bit concerning. Trump vows US will run Venezuela until safe transition of power. Maybe he's more involved than we'd like. Let's have a look. President announces temporary American control following special forces operation that bombed Caracas and seized dictator. More video here.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has
Rubio right there, as Nighthawk is implying. Rubio will be the great leader, maybe.
to be judicious, because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. It would be interesting if that actually happened, wouldn't it, man? It's not that likely. What Trump is saying there is obviously the nicest possible way to put it. And there's many other motives behind the scenes. However, that's also probably true. It probably will genuinely be better for the people of Venezuela, significantly better. And that, frankly, is almost enough reason on its own to do it. Trump says he's going to run the country. Trump framed the role as temporary but necessary, saying the US does not want to let someone else get in who will be the same. Prepared to escalate further if needed. We are ready to stage a second and much larger attack. Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that actually. And the American forces remain in position. We're there now and we're going to stay until such a time as proper transition can take place. That could, again, like, we're all very concerned. We've heard this kind of shit before. With the US regime change, it's gone very badly, and it very well might do again. This one, as I said earlier, has a chance of being different. It could be done properly. And if you were going to do it properly, this is probably what you'd do. Trump spoke during a news conference Saturday, hours after US Special Forces bombed Caracas and took him and his wife. Trump said US plans to directly manage Venezuela alongside partners, mostly Israel, I expect, while rebuilding the country's oil sector. Quote, we're going to be running it with a group and we're going to make sure it's run properly, Trump said. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. We're going to get the oil, I think it was before as well, and we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. He said the US would ensure Venezuelans are taken care of, including those forced out of Venezuela by this thug. Let the Venezuelans, wherever you can, work the oil facilities, and you won't need to worry about that. It'll be natural. Pressed on whether US forces would remain inside the country, Trump did not rule out a sustained troop presence. They always say boots on the ground. We're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to, he said, confirming US troops were already involved at a very high level during the operation. Well, of course they were. They did it. Dang why. Yeah, it's concerning. Boots on the ground. Maybe it will be another forever war. Maybe he can convert it to a forever war. I do hope not. It seems like this is not the way you would do it if you wanted a forever war. Trump repeated that the US intends to stay and retain control, saying, we're there now, we're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country very judiciously, very fairly. Asked whether the US would back opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, he noted Venezuela's newly sworn-in vice president, Trump cited considerable flexibility. He noted the vice president had been picked by Maduro, but said US officials were already engaging with her. She's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great, Trump said, added that the issue was being handled directly by his team. So he did say as well he didn't think she was the right choice, but he's now sort of accepting that she is in position. So I'm not sure what's going on with that one. Trump continued, she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this when they leave like everyone else, leave and say, like, let it go to hell. The people might prefer you do that. Both the US and Venezuelan people might prefer you to just leave it alone, but it might go to hell if you do. He said, if we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We have the greatest oil companies in the world. Go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money. Use that money in Venezuela, and the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. Don't advertise it on that basis, Trump. If you're talking about billions being invested, where do you think that billions are going to come from? The people of which country? Not Venezuela, the US. Say it's going to benefit the US. America first, right? Trump was asked by another reporter, why is running a country in South America America first? Thank you. Trump replied, we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. That is fair. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. True, but could you make that point a bit more strongly rather than saying that the biggest beneficiaries are the Venezuelan people? How is the US going to benefit monetarily? You've got to get the oil, sure, if that's a good investment. But you've got to be sure of that. If a lot of money is going to go into it, you've got to be sure of that. To be fair, at least he's being open about the oil. They weren't with the Middle East, were they? US efforts to run or oversee political transitions in foreign countries have frequently encountered setbacks in recent years, highlighting the uncertainty surrounding Trump's approach to Venezuela. It is hard to see this as overall bad. Overall, it's good. But there's a lot of things to be unsure about, a lot of unease. A lot of bad things could happen as a result. But overall, it has the amount of oil and the stability it will create and the good for the Venezuelan people. It must be good, but there's a lot of things could go wrong. To keep an eye on it. Yes, we saw this earlier. These guys had a real time. The Chinese delegates kind of implies the Chinese did not know about this, but they were there, and then Maduro wasn't. I suspect this won't be a forever war for one simple reason: no Islam. The Venezuelan people will likely enthusiastically integrate into the greater American empire with little friction. Possibly, yeah, possibly. We had this picture already. Mausoleum has been struck. This was a report from earlier. It looks like that wasn't the mausoleum. It was a nearby military base. That's what I saw anyway. In fact, here, while the photo is real, this is not the mausoleum of Hugo Chavez. It's a cool idea. And I said earlier, I bet Trump wished he had after people were saying he had. It's the Cajigal Observatory, the Astronomical and Meteorological Observatory of Caracas, used by the General Command of the Bolivarian militia. So, yeah. I do find it entertaining that we watched videos of them preparing to repel the Americans, and they look like complete amateur hour, but they had these like what looked like bazookas or RPGs of some kind, and we're ready for when the US arrives. We'll shoot them out the sky. Like, bitch, no, you won't. You were asleep when this happened. It's certainly, from a military perspective, it certainly looks good for Trump. There's obviously a lot more to it. It's not the only optic angle you can take, but optically, militarily, it looks very good for Trump. This is a different story. It's interesting, though. This is also a different story, but also interesting. New Year's resolution, says Trump, peace on earth. Nice idea. Peace is not always the best choice for any given place, and one flavor of peace might be worse than a conflict that then leads to a better flavor of peace, of course. But I would trust him more than most on this. And then the last thing is a little bit of optimism to end with. Nicolas Maduro's approval rating was 20%. Keir Starmer's approval rating is 15%. Just saying. Yeah, wouldn't that be good? So, that is all I have on Maduro, all I have open anyway. There is, I'm sure, more, and if there's more that I missed, we'll cover it next time. But let that be the wrap-up of this section of the stream. I think I've given my feelings very fully on this, but generally, this has to be a good thing. And I think optically, this has to be a good thing. There are sectors that are making a lot of noise, that there are bad aspects to it, and they are probably right. But I think overall, it has to be overall good. So, yes, thank you for joining. Aiden says it's all so tiresome. Things are going to keep happening. We're in a war. It's a war that's been going on since the beginning of humankind. It's the war to win against the universe, against the void, essentially. Building something here. It's not easy. So welcome to the eternal conflict. We're never going to win, but we can get some small wins. We're going to fight for those. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Come join the streams if you're watching via the VOD here, or not the VOD, the recording. Otherwise, I will probably make another recording today about Iran, so watch that one. Subscribe. Yes, it's been a while since I've said that, hasn't it? Subscribe to the channel that I upload this video to. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.